Chair, members of the public, this is a synopsis of where we stand. You're faced with making a decision and a recommendation. So what I did is I kind of collapsed where we're at from the original to the current proposal, and with some questions in the end. In the end, we have some information on the way. So, I can speak for itself. So, the original proposal, just going to jump right into it. There was one bond referendum question. It was formed through a coalition formed by the town council and headed by the chair, Mr. Clary, who brought a lot of interested people together and parties throughout the community, forming a coalition. It was collaborative, and I think there was a linkage, or it was interdependent between all parties involved at that time. And so at that time, you had a school facilities proposal. The original, I believe, was to mothball Hallowell, and it would, by doing so, we would have to address issues at NSCS, which was space, and FAS simply means fire alarm system. Because I didn't have a lot of room on this, so I collapsed some stuff. The second issue was storage, and we really have not a want, we have a serious need with storage. We have pockets of storage in many buildings, and if we're going to move out of Hallowell and max out NSCS as well as middle school, we need places to put a lot of the things right now that are tied up in classrooms and empty pockets in the building. So that's really a serious issue. The other was the middle school. The third floor has a room that could be conveniently converted into a classroom and leave enough space for a specialist area. And we really have an issue on the third floor with regard to, I put air. It's a serious overheating problem in the spring, in the summer, and sometimes in the fall. I know that Mr. Lahas here, he can speak to that. He's been collecting data. Mr. Kopass is here, he can speak to it. So if you want to, at any point in time, just ask for them for their input. At no time did you all request that the middle school be air conditioned. And we also said it's really the third floor, and we're looking for something to do with the conditioning of air, whether it's dehumidification or whatever, but it really is an issue there. So, and moving down to the high school, we have 6 science labs. They're really not 14 plus years old. I did some looking up, and they're 48 years old. And the boys and girls locker rooms are 48 years old also. Co-joined to that project at that time was the police station, which involved the annex and town hall. And common thread, the linkage was Kendall Bean, which is this building. So the issue back then, or some elements back then, is the original proposal for the school portion was $4.4 million. Ride approval was in question. The town council approved funding for stage 1, and we got stage 1 in, and it was approved. Ride stage 2, which is most critical, has not been submitted. It costs $31,000 to fund, to complete. And I really haven't talked to Mr. De Silva to see if it could actually get done now, but that could happen. Stage 2, which is the vetting by the Department of Ed, must take place before the Board of Education, which now goes by a different name, I believe. I'm not sure of that name. I know it's changed a few times recently. But they have to approve it after RIDE approves it. So back then, the maximum reimbursement was $1.8 million. Now that was maximum. So whether that would be achieved or not would be determined by stage 2. There also is the issue of the Department of Ed General Assembly moratorium on school construction, which I have a slide on. And then we have to meet the RIDE regulations for decommissioning a school, which I don't think is a big hurdle if it goes in that direction. So the revised proposal, as I understand it, it moved to, because of bond limitations and additional bond project, we have 3 independent referendum questions that will stand alone. We have school facilities, which went from mothballing to demolishing all of Hallowell. The NSCS space issue, there's a small tweak on that, and I'll speak to that in that slide. That eliminates all of our storage, so we have an issue with that. And the middle school, there was a tweak in that with regard to the potential allotment for addressing the air. And the high school didn't change, so the high school components are the same. And the information below pretty much stays the same. So we have 3 independent. So Kendall Dean, there's really no change. It's combined town and school department, administrative department offices. School committee provided a letter of commitment contingent upon school project approval, which is dependent on riding in the town. So at NSCS, we have 4 direct instruction classrooms so far. I believe the decision was to go to brick and mortar versus modular because there was a hope and anticipation that reimbursement from RIDE would actually potentially lower the cost of brick and mortar, so it might come close to the modulars. Expanded cafeteria accommodate large lunches, that stayed the same. It was a component to evaluate the waste system and the potable water system. And the change or the add-on was specialized instructional spaces as part of the cafeteria renovations. And lastly, there still exists a potential to address the NSCS smoke and fire alarm system upgrade in the project. The reason why the 4th circle down is important is because recent enrollment projections reflect caution regarding the length of this solution. By that I mean the numbers are going up and they're not the same as what we used when we based the recommendation for 4 direct instruction classrooms. So the middle school, the 3rd floor system was to, 3rd floor of the system was to conditioned air. The change from the original proposal was reduced the estimate from $400,000 to $127,376. And also there was no change in this, which is taking an oversized space on the 3rd floor and making it into a classroom with a small specialized area. The Hallowell, the original proposal was to mothball the site. So the thought back then was it ensures the site remains as a potential future school site if needed. It provides insurance while we move ahead with a short-term solution that could, in fact, be long-term. The solution could turn out to be long-term, but you really don't know it, not out of the woods yet with regard to enrollment. The use of 2 Hallowell buildings for badly needed storage has gone to demolishing the entire site. So the loss of needed storage, which impacts the changes at other schools, is there, exists. So the Hallowell controversy, keep it simple. Basically, I was asked to work with Mr. Flaherty, John Flaherty, and David Quattro to suggest cost savings due to bond limitations in addition to the roads project. So I made it clear that when I made my recommendations, I was not representing you, and they would have to come back to you, but my suggestion was to leave the demolition to a future prospective owner. The issue with that is it presents security issues, I understand that. Defense controversy, there really shouldn't be one. It was just a thought in terms of trying to save money. It seemed to become controversial. I don't think it should be. So my recommendation to you to consider going forward is to leave 1 building, number 10, cafeteria, untouched. In other words, don't make any changes to it, don't put any money into it through the bond, but leave it for badly needed school department storage. Make no improvements, as I said, to that 1 building, and leave as is, and that may save a few extra dollars, and demolish the remainder of the site. So the school committee must decide on school department project components. Whether the components remain as revised by the task force chair and the town council, whether you recommend changes. Can the school committee or town actually progress exclusive of RIDE or Board of Education approval? So I put together some questions, and unfortunately where it says the statements in red with quotes don't show up as red. And I was playing with this afternoon, and it shows up on red on mine, but it doesn't on yours. So I had lengthy discussions with Mr. Joseph Da Silva at RIDE, who is really the head of the school construction division. And so we talked at length and emailed at length, and he provided me with some very direct answers. So let's run through this. but where you see the quotes in the black, which is supposed to be red, are from my discussion with Mr. DeSilva. This highlighted paragraph or a statement was new to me and basically said that regardless of the project's eligibility for housing, in other words, if there were no dollars involved coming back from them, any project over $500,000 having to do with the school must comply with their construction regulations and undergo their design review. So we need to keep that in mind. So therefore, the potential school renovations work would still need to be submitted and reviewed by RIDE. So I kind of pushed him on this because I still believe that we can do something here. Moratorium question is interesting. Although this project proposes to downsize the Malishry district, you know, they continue the moratorium. It may not be within the moratorium criteria. I think we're optimistic that depending on how this turns out, we have a shot at this. I do think we have a shot at this. Certainly Mr. DeSilva could not weigh in at that. So I believe it has a shot at it because when you look at Hallowell, we have a lot of health and safety issues there. So we know that if the school portion is approved by the school committee, including demolition, and does pass, we can and must still submit the work for review approval to RIDE before any such work takes place, including demolition. So let's hold on to that because I think there's some optimism there. And then I don't think it's it's not going to be difficult to comply with their school closings regulations. I think we have plenty of time to provide that notification. So these are questions that I pose to you. But more importantly, I'm just going to jump to 10. And I would ask the school committee to consider, because this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity that I still think we can figure out how to make happen. I don't want to stand there and say, we don't need new science labs, we don't need new locker rooms. I don't want to stand there and say that, we do badly. So it's an opportunity to address that along with the fire alarm system that I'm worried about at NCS. But clearly, I think what needs to happen immediately is at least 2 members of the school committee, myself, the public facility task force chair, and anybody else that you may want to bring. I think we need to meet immediately and see what we can resolve here. I think there's hope that we can still approach RIDE. I don't know that we could get stage 2 done in time, but I'm hoping that we can approach RIDE and say, can we at least get it done or seek approval after the vote? I know it sounds a little, backwards, but I still think we should try. But I do think we need to meet immediately, and then once we meet to try and get some of these questions answered, I would ask you to reconvene as quickly as you can so you can take a vote, because in the end, that last expectation is out there, that we're kind of under the gun to take a forward position in promoting what the project's all about. So I'll stop there.
Okay. You have a formal recommendation at this point, other than what you?
Yeah, my formal recommendation is because of the scenario that I just went through, is that I'd asked 2 members of the school committee and myself to ask the task force chair and anybody else that he feels is needed, that we meet immediately to grapple with some of the questions, and at the same time, once we grapple with these, I can then approach Mr. De Silva to see if we can do something after the fact. So,
All right, let's get the motion on the recommendation on the floor. Motion to approve a subcommittee to meet with the public utilities, public task force, ASAP, to go over those questions raised by some members of the board previously, and meet as soon as possible.
Mr. Chair, I will disclose, I was a member, I was a school committee member representative on the public facilities task force. I will make that motion at this time. I wanted to point out we have a number of members from the task force here, and they can ask some questions about, not about the content so much, but sort of moving things forward. I also think they want to speak to us about.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I want to get the motion on the
Okay.
floor, so then we can open up for discussion a while, and anybody who wishes to speak, will be allowed to speak at that time. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Chair? Okay, discussion. Did you want to start off, or?
Well, just that, I think that the direction the school committee is getting at, well, taking a foot, I think a lot of people want to know that the school committee, where we stand is to make sure these issues are ironed out. And we've discussed that these issues are important. I don't know, I might ask the chief, if I could ask the chief. I'm not sure that, we still have the facility, we still have, we still exist, we still exist. I know this question is come on.
Shall I, want me to speak from the, I don't know if you.
No, you can speak from there.
So the task force, when it was convened by the council by resolution, was intended to meet from June through December, to do the work of the task force, and to bring forward a recommendation by January 20th. It did that, and at that time, the way the resolution was structured, the task force work was complete. It was looking really at 30,000 feet, order of magnitude. We have all these facilities in town. We have a number of needs. How do we prioritize those, bearing in mind that we don't have limitless resources? And we have a number of very important objectives to achieve. So that work was done. I don't think it was ever anticipated the task force was necessarily going to get in and work on the real fine-tuned stuff about whether we do 6 science classrooms or we do 4. That's something that I think that certainly if the school committee has an opinion and says, let's do a timeout here. We've got X amount to work with. Maybe it's better to do 4 science labs if we think that that's what we need, and instead, leverage the savings someplace else. To me, that's more about a school committee recommendation, not so much a task force recommendation.
So, I'm sorry.
So the task force is essentially done. What we have here this evening is a group that's come together to really promote passage. It's a volunteer group to promote passage of all 3 questions. But I think that what you're probably getting at is there still an opportunity to tweak the plan a little bit? And I think that there is. And I think I agree with the superintendent, we should have that meeting. The plan, and the way that the questions are on the ballot, is that it's a plan approved by the town council. So the town council has amended it a number of times, the most recent of which was May 18th, I think it was, because we felt under pressure to get something that we're fine with this. We need to be able to roll it out to the public, explain what this plan's going to do. It doesn't mean that the plan cannot continue to be fine-tuned. My opinion.
I think these are very important aspects, but I also think it's all over the line of fine-tuning. And when I say that, I want to make sure that I don't want to diminish these concerns. They're definitely something we want to work on. I guess I'm just wondering, Superintendent, going back to your recommendation, and really what Mr. Flaherty just said, Chairman Flaherty just said, if it's appropriate to meet maybe with the council instead of members of the facilities task force, just because the facilities task force, I don't know if it exists anymore technically.
Right, it does.
It doesn't exist, yeah. Or,
I mean, I can give you an example. So when we did go through the cost-cutting stage, when it was decided to include a road on part of this, I also met with the chief of police. We talked about areas where we could save on the renovation of the Bushy School. That was superintendent did the same thing with schools. So now we're at the point where we're doing fine-tuning work. The task force work is really done. I mean, that was to look at the big order of magnitude type of reuse issues. So I think you're right. We could probably have 2 members of the school committee, superintendent, town administrator, and maybe myself and one other person from the town council. And we can have a discussion about what further changes you all might want to see happen with the school facilities portion of the plan. That can still be done. The sooner that happens, the better, because as you heard, we're trying to roll out a marketing campaign. We're talking about having open houses starting in October to begin to tell folks what they can expect from this. So if there needs to be any further changes to the plan, and I'm not opposed to that, that really has to happen sooner versus later.
and also,
That's really why we're here. I think
Sure.
that's what I recommended. We need to do that rather quickly.
I'm so glad somebody had the group to here, and actually, I want to clarify though, you said the group to advocate for, but this group here right now tonight it's an information. I mean, you're actually here from the group right now that's here tonight is information group, right? In other words, it's not advocating the plan as much as getting the information out to the public about what the plan
Promoting
is.
passage of all 3 bonds.
Right.
So the dollar amounts associated with that, what the council may or may not decide to do in terms of modifying the plan is not so much a concern of this group. This group is come together to go out and promote passage.
Oh, PR.
Yeah.
So you have to,
Mrs. Bowles?
So, for example, I'm just looking at question number 8. The disbursement report for tonight, in our disbursement report, we just approved about $6,000 for the Hallowell sewer access fee. So if Hallowell is indeed demolished, who will be paying that $6,000 sewer access fee? If you don't know that answer, who do we ask?
I don't know that answer. I think it's a function of who has care and custody of that site when the investment is made.
Right, so that refers to question number 8. So if you don't know the answer to question number 8, who knows the answer to that?
I think it's an issue of timing. You approved an expense for making a sewer connection, is that what I understood?
Tonight, so this is a yearly thing, about $6,000.
That's all right.
That's what you would
Our,
say.
Okay.
assessment fee. So, in other words, if you don't know the answer to question number 8, I'd like to know who do I ask so I can find out.
All right, so
who's
question
gonna
number
pay
8,
this.
let's just review it. If the entire Hallowell site is demolished, who has care and custody?
Town school.
Pardon me, town school.
School.
I think that if there's no longer any school function taking place on the property, that the town would take care and custody, is my guess. I'm not,
Okay, that's the problem though.
Yeah.
It's a guess, Mr. Flaherty. I'd like a direct answer so I know that next year, the $6,000 sewer assessment fee is on our disbursement report. I either make a motion to approve, or I say, not our job, not our bill. I'd like an answer, and I don't, if you don't know who to,
it's a question for the solicitor.
okay.
If I need to, I think we have to really come to a, I think part of it would be, my opinion, is just that building 10, whether building 10, and this, I know this has come up a lot, I think the demolition has been discussed quite a lot. The issue that tends to come up is, do we keep building 10 or not? If building 10 is still there, then I think the answer is one thing. I think if building's not, this is just my own personal opinion, if building 10 is not there, then it's something else, though there may be an issue of actually technically turning it over to 10.
Generally, anybody who owns the building
Yeah.
owns the assessment. So when and if the town decides that building 10 isn't there, because I think Mr. Connell's right, building 10 is still under our control, so to speak, we would then still be responsible for the sewer assessment. But until such time, that question, I think what Mrs. Boris is trying to get, is who's going to assume that cost if building 10 is gone? To me, the town would own it, they'd have to assume that until such time they sold it to the new buyer.
So
Because then the new buyer would then assume that assessment.
I think you're right.
Even the 30,000-foot look that Mr. Flaherty talked about is really important to consider, because you know that Mr. Flaherty and I had talked about this way back when we started, and he had a good point, because really the issue of the future of any possible future school site, it's it. And so that was the concept of mothballing. So, you know, I was a little surprised to see we're gonna kill the whole site and then go from there. So it kind of took away two things that I'm concerned about that I'm hoping we can talk about in a small group. One is, we're all hoping that this solution is, quote, long-term, unquote. But you're not sure, and I don't think we'll be out of the woods for 5 to 6 years. So if that site goes, that's it. And so, and the other important thing, other than, you know, I think the sewer assessment's important, but the other is storage. It's real. Some people did a walkthrough with me and Mr. Kopaz over the weekend, and I saw firsthand the issue with storage. We can't move into NSCS, and we can't address the middle school until we have a place to put a lot of the things that we have. And we saw boiler rooms, that we had things in boiler rooms we shouldn't have. We have things off loading docks that we shouldn't have in those particular areas. So my concern is that as it relates to what do you have for any type of short-term insurance policy. So I think that's the key for me. And again, I don't know that we're going to get at this tonight, but I would be willing to meet anytime, any place, Saturday morning, 7 o'clock. Let's wrestle with these and then ask you all to come back as quickly as you can so we can give you the answers and you can take a vote. So,
Yeah, I think you're correct, and I think what Mr. Flaherty had indicated was meeting with the council, 2 members of the council, the town administrator, you, and 2 members of the school board. Because the other part, obviously the sewer assessment is one thing, but if we get into the building, shared building here, how is the shared expenses going to be, you know, incurred? Because the way the budgets are operating lately, everybody doesn't want to have any new budget line items, but we need to create that, and people need to know that that's going to be a shared responsibility.
It is. But I think the point is, while we may not have an answer to that yet,
I understand that.
the fact is that we all know that there's going to be savings on the school side, there's going to be savings on the town side. Together, if we can't work that out, how we're going to share that, there's a problem.
so that's a point. I would agree with Mr. Flaherty on, and I don't think those are hard to work out. I
I
think
understand.
that's
But they
not
need to
hard
be
to
aware.
work out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's part of the motion. I think Mr. Flaherty has agreed to, your motion was to meet with the public utility.
Yeah, but you can amend it any way you want. I just think whoever they want to bring to, we need to get it there.
All right, hold on. Who made the second? Mr. Pacheco?
Yes.
You withdraw your second? Sure. Withdraw your motion?
Can I
Yeah,
mention
withdraw the motion.
I'll
Withdraw the motion, it's a heck of a lot easier.
I'll withdraw the original. I'll withdraw the motion.
All right, yes, you can.
I'd like to make a motion, especially based on the discussion we had, that we have a meeting between, again, to avoid a no more than 2 members of the school committee, no more than 2 members of the town council, and the town administrator and the superintendent. And is there anyone else?
I think that's all you need, really, unless you see otherwise.
No, I think that's fine.
Smaller the better, working better.
It makes it easier to get together. Okay,
That's my recommendation.
All right.
And to meet as expeditiously as possible.
all right, you've heard the motion by Mr. O'Connell, second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Pacheco. Any other discussion? Any comments from the public, not to say utility?
Just to facilitate the meeting, Mr. Flaherty, are you going to ask Mrs. Todd to hold
I will.
another, so you can get another council member?
Yeah, and, and just in the category of discussion, so you realize this council has 4 meetings left, October 6th, 20th, November 3rd, and November 17th. So, obviously, anything that we do that we want to have approved, I think the target would be for October, what did I say, 16th? 20? For the 20th.
Which there should be no problem with that.
Yeah.
I think we're conflict.
We can get it done before then.
Yeah, because whenever you folks decide to meet, we're going to schedule a special meeting.
Right after
And
that.
Okay, all right, good.
so
So
you'll
we
get
may
that.
have to do that, actually. We may have to schedule
may
special
not.
meetings.
You also may not.
I think we could make your October 3rd meeting, honestly. I think if, depending on how quickly you can find another member, and we can.
That would be ideal, because we're talking about, we're gonna get into this in a little bit, we're talking about a date to have open houses. And we're targeting, I think it's the October 18th. So, we certainly wanna know exactly what.
What you're
the
selling.
deal is.
What you're selling.
Yeah. I think we're probably, you know, if we understand that there may be some tweaks, we're probably 98% there. But if there's gonna be any tweaks, we should do that before we
Right.
start having those
And
comments.
that's why we're asking if you can get a small group together, ASAP.
Yeah. And I'm gonna aim to get somebody who is, one of the two who's returning, I guess, because, well,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Well,
Yes.
one thing though, is going to be, we won't be meeting, well, what I'm trying to get at is, if I heard you correct, Mr. Chair, and I'm town administrator, we're going to like to have an open house, so I presume you'd like to have access to the school buildings for those days, when you do the open house, right?
Yes, I think that the town administrator is working with the
Yeah,
superintendent on that.
we communicate with that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we don't need to approve
In
those.
terms of timeline, honestly, if we can meet and resolve this before their October 3rd meeting, there's no reason why we couldn't ask the school committee to have a special meeting that same week.
Right.
And then try and put the questions to bed.
Hey, did you want to bring up anything now, or did you have a comment? You're all set? You want to bring up anything now that you wanted to bring to our attention before we move on this? We're open for discussion.
No, I think we want to talk about, the promotional work, that is in the works for, advanced passage, but that doesn't, I don't think that affects the motion that you're.
No, it doesn't, but I'm also leaving it open for the floor, so we can allow the discussion. So if you wanted to do that at this time, it's not going to affect this.
Okay. Well, I'll turn to the town administrator.
Well, in all due deference to everyone, and I appreciate that you let us come and speak. The thing is, we're trying to promote the 3 bond issues as a package. You know, originally, I think everyone knew that there was one bond issue and all the wording was in one, and then we got a lot of feedback from people saying they'd rather have them split up, so then it was changed, sent to the legislature, approval, so there's 3 now, very distinct, very easy. And all we're trying to do is, we have ballot question 8, 9, 10, and little bullet statements to give a little bit of an idea, because someone, you know, they're not gonna go to the website and read the copious amounts and things, although we like to have them do that. Just bullet statements that can identify what the salient points are and the main points. So I think it's gonna behoove us to hold off on any PR until we have this meeting, figure it out, hammer away some bullet points, and then let's just go do it.
That'd be
And the open house date again was, because I know
We're
we
shooting
do
for the 18th, which is Saturday. And we're thinking like 10 to 2, you know, open up how, and, you know, just have people come and see. When we take pictures, you know, they say pictures, you have 1,000,000 words or whatever, but having someone physically walk through the shower room or through the, you know, that's just, they're gonna know, this is not, we're not kidding, we really need this stuff. So, and we want to promote it as a package, not as separate issues, you know, it's all interdependent at this point. So the sooner we know exactly what points you'd like for us to hammer away at, I think the better, you know, because we
Yeah.
have lead time for printing.
the more people you reach that don't normally come to
Yeah.
school board, town council meetings, are the people you really want to get here, because those are the guys, people that come out of the woodwork, you know?
Yeah, I understand the open house too. I'm sorry,
Okay.
the open house is going to be, you got here through the schools, Kendall, the town administration building, right? And I mean, everything will be open up, that's the idea, right? So that everybody can come around and see everything.
With the exception, I think, and, you know, whatever you folks think, but NSES may be not necessary, you know, but I would think the areas that you're looking to have people make a commitment of, a monetary commitment on, you know, those are the buildings you want to emphasize, just so they can see for themselves that we really need to move together on this.
So the one thing that I wanted to get on everyone's radar in the school committee is the issue of Hallowell. I've heard a lot of feedback from people in this town. Multiple generations have gone through that school, and even though it's in awful condition, I think that most people realize intellectually that the school has to come down there's still an emotional attachment to the school. And so we thought that maybe it would make sense to have a kickoff where we actually do a press event, we have a presentation, that we do it at Howell. People, it's an opportunity for people who haven't been back there for many, many years to come and visit it. Maybe say goodbye. We even joked about having, calling hours, in terms of how we promote it. But the other thing that I've heard from a lot of people is people who have remembered the legacy of Dr. Harry Howell. And the issue of naming rests with the school committee. And I've had some conversation with one of the descendants, and he's talked to the rest of the family to understand what their wishes may be. And I think that would be really useful and helpful if the school committee could come to some resolution on what it might want to do with respect to naming, because I think that could be part of the selling package.
And I think even if you not promote it, but made the public aware that Dr. Harry Hallowell's building or his legacy that he left in North Smithfield is not going to go away. It will be placed in another proper location where his memory and his service to this community and to the state at such a great dramatic time, because it was a very great dramatic time.
So maybe if the school committee could put that on a future agenda, so that we can make that part of the rollout to the community would be useful.
I don't know if you could decide at the time, but it's certainly something that you could entertain.
Right, but I think putting it out and letting the public know that just because the school's gone, the legacy of his name, any family will not go away.
That's my opinion.
Any other? Okay, so after this, what I guess Sherry will do is communicate with you, or Steve will communicate with Paul and you to figure out when they can, anybody from the board that wishes to? No, we didn't, but I'm asking for anybody wishing to represent the school committee to do so.
Yeah.
Chris? Okay. There's our two. Steve will be out there as well?
I think I'll involve Tony, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think anybody that might be willing to be able to add some credence to the discussion without getting it more convoluted. And anybody on the board that does have any concerns, you want to write it down, give it to either Chris or Bill or Sherry, and she can follow up to the appropriate people. Okay? All right, you've heard the motion, it's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the recommendation of the superintendent, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. All right, next item is school bus